So the games are done, but I mean, there's definitely players who made moves, players who definitely improved their stock, players who I wish you could have seen a little bit more, and then players that definitely didn't do as much with their time as they could have. Let's kind of get to the, I think a player who barely played but definitely showed his importance. I mean, Tajon. Tajon played about 15 minutes, and we saw the value of a Tajon. Especially against a team, the higher tier teams, you need multiple channels of attack. And without Tajon on the pitch, you're very much left with wherever Davies is where the attack is coming from. Now, maybe that's a product of the strategy where they're trying to build through against Uruguay, but a team like Uruguay basically is good defensively, and the simple play was sometimes the better move. But Tajon, not playing much, definitely showed his value. I think him on the pitch with Davies, it hasn't clicked as much, but you see the importance of it. It allows Davies not to be on the ball, and I think Davies not on the ball is definitely the more dangerous aspect, because that allows him to move, and when you're trying to deal with that pace on the ball, that's hard. So Tajon, definitely presence was felt and missed, and he improved his stock by not playing. The other thing we're all talking about, Ismael Kone. I mean, the fact that he's one of the first midfielders coming off the bench to play. Now, granted, there's only 4 midfielders, but it wasn't Mark Anthony K. And we've seen this with Herman before, especially with teams that are going to play low block and defensively. We saw this against Costa Rica. We saw this to a degree against Honduras. But I think Kone definitely, against some teams, especially teams that are going to sit back, he'll be afforded a bit of space to perform. I think for most people, we saw with his passing, I mean, we're not about to crown him like the next Pogba here. I'm not, at least. But he definitely showed well with the time that he was given, both in the Qatar matchup and especially against Uruguay. We didn't get a goal, but we weren't able to show much for it. But I think Kone definitely improved what he was doing, and that's good to see. Jonathan David moving around, I think didn't improve his stock, but didn't hurt his stock. I think he's definitely a player that you have to make a decision on, and I think for me, definitely performed well. The goal against Qatar definitely helped. Against Uruguay, everything was going through Davies, and it just felt like Davies was making one touch too many. David looked all right. Also, a special shout out. I'm not going to say he improved his stock, but Sam Piet had a great season so far at MLS with CF Montreal, and I mean, he can put in the shift, and that's what you need. And all you need, that central defensive midfielder, he definitely put in that shift. So Sam Piet, man, bravo monsieur, t'as joué bien là. People who weren't good but also weren't bad, kind of meh. I think you can put Laren in this, or you could say he needs to improve, and he disappointed. You saw good Laren in the first 10 minutes against Qatar, and then you saw bad touch Laren against Uruguay. I think the question with Laren is, how long does Herdman stay with him? I know there's Canada Kyle, there's Club Kyle, and then there's just not engaged Kyle. I think if you can get Canada Kyle going, it definitely improves your chances. But his touch, he's got to be decisive. I think in the Uruguay game we mentioned in the last video on the team, everything was a little bit too slow for Uruguay. Uruguay was a lot crisper, and one touch too many means teams can get back to their shape. So improving that pace of speed, improving that decision making is really going to help them. Who else? Eustáquio didn't have a bad window, didn't have a good window, but he was solid. Nothing really wrong with that. Kamal Miller also, I'll put in this category. Wasn't bad, wasn't good, wasn't exceptional, but it was just consistent. I know the Uruguay game, he gave up the foul, and to be honest, again on the replay, he got ball, but the ref called it, so the ref called it. But I think Kamal definitely was fine. I wonder, and I think this is my one disappointment with this, I would have wished to see more players, especially the center backs. Johnson didn't have the best window. Allison didn't. Getting caught up. It felt like a lot of times. People were saying they were attacking through the left, Uruguay was on the right. Johnson felt himself a little positionally outclassed, and like I said before, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is the world stage. You aren't going to find CONCACAF teams here unless you meet them further on in the round. And Canada, every team you're playing here have every team you're playing here have players at a high level throughout their lineups and their roster. We may have high quality players on our roster, but they have high quality players. I messed that up. We may have a few exceptional talents and some good quality players. The rosters we're going to be facing are nothing but good quality players who are playing at a high level. So your decision making has to be faster, everything there. Borjan didn't have a bad window. I mean, Milan Borjan, the first goal against Uruguay, free kick, maybe should have moved over faster. Positionally, that is. Nothing's worse, I think, when you get a goal like that as a keeper, when you can get a hand on it, but not enough. A little bit too deep there, but players who didn't help their stock, man, unless you're playing a position that helps Liam Miller. Liam Miller is a winger, and we haven't seen Basil Liam Miller for Canada. And for the time he's getting against Qatar, same with Charles Andreas Brim. Didn't give us enough hope. You know, there are players who will more likely be on the roster, at least in Miller's case. Brim is going to be at the edge, and it's going to be questions. But I think it would have been nice to see a little bit more, especially going into this Uruguay game. The Uruguay game was always going to be the test. We didn't see Luka Kolyosho, but I think at the end of the day, it's the training atmosphere, those things that matter. And if you're in these camps, it gives you the opportunity to see the player more. I think in terms of seeing more players, I know Waterman is a question. But realistically, if you're going to try to be pessimistic about it, Waterman was brought in to replace Daniel Henry. I don't think Waterman makes this roster if Daniel Henry is healthy. And I think that's that's not my opinion. I think he should be on the roster, but I think that's Herdman's thinking. I think Daniil, if he's healthy, he's going to the World Cup. And Waterman didn't play. We didn't even see a Kennedy sighting. Cornelius is further down on the depth chart, so I think not seeing other center back pairings or other center back players, it was the exact same three. They tried to play their best players here, and that's what they got. So not seeing the center backs is a bit of a concern. If you lose Vittoria, what do? You probably play Kennedy, or maybe he goes and tries to play Daniil Henry, which can either work or not. But the center backs who were you brought 6 center backs, and you only played essentially 3 for both games. I think that's a bit of a concern, a little bit of lack. Larray and Adekubi definitely in this higher pace pitch. In terms of pace, you got players now, they have to be a little bit faster. They struggled on counter sometimes, and especially in the Uruguay matchup. Adekubi is a solid player, as is Larray, but again, like we said with the whole team, decision making has to be faster at this level. You got to be crisper, and passing has to be better as well. So I think for those are the importance. I don't know where I put Davies, to be honest. I think Davies had a good and bad. It was Davies. The hero ball works sometimes. Now maybe that's a product of not having Tajon on the other side. I think for me, the best game I've seen both Tajon and Davies play together was that Mexico game at Azteca, where you saw the pace of both players and players working off the ball and that movement, just saying crosses and then players trying to get to the end of it. So I think you're going to need some sort of version of that. I think your most effective version of Davies is one who's off the ball but can also create on it if need be. And that's why you need Tajon. So I don't know where I'm going to put Davies. He didn't improve his stock. He is what he is at this point in his career, and I think he still has to work to grow. But I don't know. I'm going to stop rambling now, guys. Who'd impressed? Who was kind of meh? Who do you think their stock dropped here? Guys, shout me out in the comments, man. Let me know.